Good morning. Right, today I'm off to stay with the Dracula family. So I thought I'd come to a graveyard first because I was reading a story last night and it is the most amazing woman I've ever read about. Wait until I tell you this story, she's amazing. So I've come to Morpeth. Now this is north of where I was. I've gone out of the way for this one. But I was reading up on this woman last night and it said she was something. Let me just get my notes out, hang on. It said she was a suffragette. A suffragette, and I didn't know what a suffragette was. So I started doing some research, and it was so fascinating. I even got that involved that I found a film all about this woman, all about the suffragettes and what they stood for. Let me tell you all about it. It was a wonderful film. I think it's called Suffragette. If you get the chance to see it, please do, it's amazing. But yeah, I'll get to her grave and I'll tell you all about her life. You're going to love this one. I believe it's called St Mary's Church or something like that, St Mary's Parish. And this graveyard is absolutely beautiful. Just full of trees, all different kinds of trees. And some of the gravestones, wow. But yeah, I'm looking for somebody. She's called Emily Davison. So here's Emily's memorial, and as you can see, people come here. These are the colours of the women's union she was in. Now that's what a suffragette is. A suffragette is somebody who was fighting to get women's votes when only men could vote in the early 1900s. And you can see here people have been coming and they're leaving purple and white flowers and things all over. She was like a feminist basically. So Emily died on the 8th of June 1913. Now during her life she was arrested 9 times, she went on hunger strike 7 times, and she was force-fed 49 times. A bit of a rebel. I've just realised I said 9 times. She's been arrested 9 times. It's number 9 again. And oddly enough, she comes from a family. Her dad was married and they had 9 children. She was one of the 9 children. Then his wife died and he remarried again. He was 45 years old. She was only, I think, 17. She was very young for him. And they had 3 kids as well. But it was a middle-class family. They were doing very well. And she had a very good upbringing, very good in education. She was very intelligent. But then her dad died and her mum couldn't afford to send her to all these posh schools anymore. So she had to drop out. So Emily did a bit of teaching and saved up all her money so that she could go to Oxford College, which she did. She could only afford 1 term, but it was enough for her to take a degree and everything. So she passed a course at Oxford with first-class honours, but she couldn't graduate to get the degree because in them days women weren't allowed to have a degree, men only. So Emily became a teacher. And in 1906 she joined a women's union. I'm just going to call it Women's Union through this, but it's the Women's Social Political Union, or WSPU as it was known. I'll call it Women's Union. She joined them and they believed that confrontational tactics were the only way that women were going to get the vote. So she joined that. Whether that's because she couldn't graduate, I don't know, maybe that had something to do with it. But she was a firm believer that women should have the right to vote. In 1909, Emily then gave up all her teaching jobs. She'd worked her way up the ranks in this women's union. She gave up her teaching jobs and just joined the union full-time, working for the union full-time. She was high up by now, and this is where it all started to go not so much wrong, but get a bit dangerous for her. So the first time she was arrested it was in March 1909. She was marching with 21 other women from the union to the Prime Minister. She wanted to see the Prime Minister so they could ask him about women's votes and why women couldn't vote and when they're going to be able to vote. They were getting there and Emily assaulted a policeman. She got arrested and sentenced to 1 month in prison. Moving on a couple of months, July 1909, she was arrested for trying to interrupt a political meeting which was just men. Women weren't allowed there. She tried to interrupt that. She got arrested and sentenced to 2 months in prison. But she only served 5 days because she went on hunger strike. went on hunger strike, and they released her after 5 days. A few months later, September 1909, she was arrested for smashing windows at another political meeting just for men. She was sentenced to 2 months, but she went on hunger strike again and she only served 2 days. 1 month later, arrested for trying to throw a stone at a politician. She was just about to throw it, a policeman caught her, grabbed her arm, and she was arrested. 1 month later, we're now into November 1909, she was arrested again for throwing stones at politicians and sentenced to 1 week of hard labour. But by this time they'd passed a law saying that prisons were now able to force feed prisoners. So she got force fed. She went on hunger strike and the force fed her. And she went on to say this is one of the most undescribable bits of pain you could ever go through, and a completely barbaric torture. So the force fed her anyway and threw her back into a cell. While she was in a cell, she thought, right, you're not force feeding me again because that was absolutely awful. I don't want to go through that again. So she put a bed up against the cell door and a stool to stop them from getting in. And they couldn't get in, couldn't the prison wardens, so they smashed the window to the cell and put a fire hose through it and set a fire hose on her for 15 minutes. When they finally got in, they dragged her out again, took her to hospital, made her better and released her after 8 more days. But Emily, being the fighter that she is, she took the prison people to court, sued them for using the hose on her, and she won. She won damages of, how many was it? 40 shillings, which in them days I should imagine were a lot of money. I wanted to work it out to today's money to tell you how much it would be, but I've no internet, so I couldn't. 3 months later, April 1910, she's arrested. She tried to hide in Westminster Palace because the Prime Minister was going to be there the next day and she wanted to ask him about women's votes. And she hid in like a heating area or something, a cupboard or something. But she got caught by the night watchman and arrested. Then she was arrested for breaking windows in the Crown Office. She was sentenced to a month in prison, went on hunger strike, force fed for 8 days and then released. Can you believe this is all one woman within like 6 months? Then we move forward to April 2011, the 2nd of April. That's when they do the census. They do a census once a decade, they do in Britain. And it's where they count who is where, who is living in every house, what job they have, how old they are, etc. Now, the Women's Union decided, because their vote doesn't count, they're not seen as proper people, they're all going to hide on this night so they can't be put in the census. So Emily hides in the chapel of Westminster Palace, but she gets caught. And the ironic thing about this one is Westminster Palace put her on their census, and her landlady put her on her census. She was actually on the census twice, yet she was trying to evade being on the census. December 1911. I bet you don't know what happens next. Emily gets arrested. This time she sets fire to post boxes outside Westminster. And she's arrested and sent to prison for, I think it's 2 months. And in protest at being force fed, when she actually got out or was released, she stood on top of some iron staircase and she jumped. This was just outside the prison. She jumped 30 or 40 feet down trying to kill herself in protest at being force fed. She didn't die. She broke her back and smashed her head open. Went to hospital, they made her better and released her. And the last time she was arrested was November 1912 for attacking a minister, a church minister, with a horsewhip because she thought it was a famous politician. She was arrested, sentenced to 10 days, went on hunger strike, released after 4 days. But that, as remarkable a story as it is, isn't the main part of this story. So you've got to remember who this woman is, what she stands for, yeah? This is the Women's Union colours, and it was all about trying to get the vote for women. So she had another plan. She went to the Derby, okay, at Epsom Derby, the second biggest racehorse in the world. Still is, was then, behind the Grand National. And she went there because the king had a horse racing there in the Derby, and she had a plan. She set off from London to Epsom with 2 flags from the Women's Union in these colours, and it said on the flags, votes for women on the flags. She had them in her pocket. She went to the Derby. What was the horse called? Anmer was the horse. And she stood on the corner of the last bend into the home straight, and the race set off. And she's waiting until Anmer is coming around the corner, and she just walks out onto the track. I've got footage of this, I'm going to have to show you it. She just walks out onto the track in front of the horse, and the horse just runs straight over the top of her, and she dies 2 days later in hospital. Now, Emily never told anyone she was going to do this, so nobody knows if she was trying to commit suicide by jumping in front of the horse, or she was trying to pin a flag to the horse's bridle. They have studied, because there's quite a lot of video footage of this. They have studied it recently and decided she was trying to pin one of the flags from in her bag, because she has it in her hand at the time. She's trying to pin it on the horse, and just as she's doing it, that's when the horse hits her. So she basically went down as a martyr in the Women's Union. They loved her. All the world knew all about her. Everyone knew about this union fighting for women's rights. The king himself wrote in his diary, where have I got this? This is unbelievable. The king wrote in his diary that it was scandalous, and the queen, she called Emily a horrid woman. Yeah, I know whose side I'm on. Our Emily. Don't like that queen. I don't know which queen that was at the time, but she doesn't sound very nice. So on Emily's grave here, you've got the words, "Deeds, not words," which is this woman's union's slogan. And she's well remembered. The funeral was amazing. 5,000 of the Women's Union marched behind the coffin through London. There was 50,000 people watching the funeral. It made headline news all around the world. 50,000 people watching the funeral. And then she was put on a train and brought up here to Morpeth, because this is where her family come from. And here she is buried. That was in 1913. 1920 is when women were given the right to vote in America, and 1928 when they were given the right in England, in Britain. It's just a shame she wasn't alive to see it, but she must have had a massive impact and be a massive reason why that happened. So that is the most spectacular woman I think I've ever read about. All them arrests, she never gave up, and she died for the cause. What a woman, what a woman. Still don't believe women should be able to vote, but that's a different story. Oh no, I'm only joking, Hey Emily, I'm joking. No, I do think all women should be allowed to vote. On some things, anyway. So that's the story of Emily Davison for you guys. I hope you enjoyed that one. If you're a feminist, you really should come and visit her sometime. Feminists love her. Not keen on feminists. They're very hard to pull, you know, in pubs. If you want to try and get a drink with one of them, they usually say no. A lot of them are gay as well, aren't they, feminists? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with gay, I'm just saying it means there's less for me, us, men. When I was looking for famous people's graves in the area, I also found, not far from here, Sir Bobby Robson, the England manager. He was the manager of the England Football Club. What a man, what a man. But I actually chose Emily Davison over a football England manager, which for me is an amazing thing because I'm a massive, massive football fan. But that story just got my heart. It really got my heart. As I say, if you do get the chance to watch that film, watch it. I think it's only from 2015, Judi Dench is in it, I think. Someone like her's in it. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I watched it through the night, like 2 till 4 in the morning. So I'm going to be tired in a bit. Anyway, let's move on, let's move on, let's move on. So a couple of you in the comments asked me to stay here to see this statue. Now, this is Tommy. I'll tell you about that in a minute. It's art. You know I don't do art. Now, it was done by Ray Lonsdale. He's the sculptor of it. And underneath here is actually a time capsule. And, there, look. It's got his name on there. It's actually a time capsule in there, and he's got a letter in there, and there's a lot of, like, kids have done pictures and things. I'd love to open it, see what's in it. But it's known as the Tommy statue, which isn't quite right, because Ray actually named it 1101. Because that's... The World War I ended at 11 o'clock on the 11th month of 1918, and 1101 was the first minute of peace after World War I, so that's what he named the sculpture. But it's widely known as the Tommy statue. Tommy being, it's what Germans used to call English, and all Commonwealth countries as well, they called the English Tommies. If a German soldier wanted to talk to an English soldier over the trench, he'd shout out, Tommy. I don't know why, and I don't understand why a German soldier would want to speak to an English soldier anyway, but there you go. It's over 9 foot tall and 1.2 tons in weight. Quite nice for art. You know I don't do art, but I appreciate that one. I do World War, and I do the odd sculpture. So, good one, Ray, I like that. I admire your artistic work. Right, let's just bring you up to date with the donations in the last 24 hours. We've got Stuart Wiggins, well done lad, £20. Belky is the best, £20. Debbie Cooper, $100. Fantastic. Kelly Beeder, £5. Mousehead, £2. Cliff Aldrich, $20. Brian Pearson, $50, and Mikkel from Denmark, £50. That's really good. Thank you very much, people. That's about £210. We're now up to £51,443, and I'm aiming for £52,000. So come on, guys, please. Keep the donations coming in. Let's make another wish come true. I want it to be £52,000 raised in 52 weeks. That would be fantastic. So we've got £557 to go. All the links are in the description. Go to diggingthecourse.com and click donate, please. Thank you very much. There are a couple more places I wanted to go today, but it started throwing it down. I've got to get to Dracula family's house, see what we're going to be doing. Probably just going to sit down and drink tea all afternoon and talk about coffins and stuff like that. So I'm going to make my way there, so see you next time. No idea what I'll be doing on Digging the Coast. And don't forget, you've got to subscribe to my new channel if you want to follow me on my next adventure. Links in the description. I'll put a thingy up here, or up here. Click on that, subscribe. It is called The Travel Troll. 3, 6... 5.